The moment your paycheck reaches your bank account, something begins happening almost immediately. Before you've even had time to think about your financial goals, your mind may already be deciding what that money can buy. Maybe it's the phone you've been thinking about replacing. Maybe it's the shoes sitting in your online cart. Maybe it's a weekend meal, a new gadget, a subscription, or simply the feeling that because your account balance is higher, you can finally relax and spend a little. And that's where the problem begins. Because your paycheck can create the illusion that you have more financial freedom than you actually do. You see the money arrive, but you don't immediately see all the responsibilities attached to it. Your rent is waiting. Your electricity bill is waiting. Your groceries are waiting. Your debts are waiting. Your future is waiting. And if you don't decide where your money goes before your impulses do, your paycheck can disappear surprisingly fast. But here's the interesting part. The same moment that can trigger unnecessary spending can also become the most important moment in your financial routine. Instead of asking, "What can I afford now that I've been paid?" you can ask a much more powerful question. What should this money accomplish before I receive my next paycheck? That question changes everything. Because building wealth isn't simply about earning a lot of money. It's about controlling the direction of the money you already earn. You can have a large income and still live under constant financial pressure. And you can have a modest income and gradually build serious financial stability if you consistently give your money a purpose. That's the idea we're going to explore. What should actually happen when you get paid? Not someday. Not at the end of the month. Right when the money arrives. Because if your financial plan only begins after you've finished spending, you've already given your spending habits the first opportunity to make every decision for you. And for millions of people, that's exactly what happens. Their paycheck arrives. The bills get paid. A few purchases appear here and there. Then comes another purchase that doesn't seem important. Then another. A few food deliveries. A few online orders. A few entertainment subscriptions. A few nights out. None of these expenses feels catastrophic on its own. But that's precisely why they are dangerous. Financial problems don't always arrive as one enormous purchase. Sometimes they arrive as dozens of small decisions that never feel serious enough to stop. And by the end of the month, the question becomes, where did all my money go? The answer is usually hiding in plain sight. It went everywhere. That's why the first step isn't investing. It isn't buying stocks. It isn't opening 5 different savings accounts. The first step is understanding your money. You need to know what your paycheck is already committed to before you decide what you can do with what's left. Think of your income as a group of workers arriving at the beginning of every month. Each dollar has a job. Some dollars are responsible for keeping you housed. Some pay for food. Some keep the lights on. Some cover transportation. Some protect you against emergencies. Some reduce debt. Some build investments. And yes, some can be used for entertainment. The problem is that if you don't assign those jobs yourself, your spending habits will assign them for you. So let's start with the most basic question. How much of your income actually keeps your life running? Not the things you enjoy. Not the things you're used to. Not the things you would hate to give up. The things you genuinely need. Housing is one. Food is another. Utilities. Transportation. Healthcare. Insurance. Essential communication. And required debt payments. These expenses form the foundation of your financial life. But there is an important distinction here. Something can be important to you without being financially necessary. For example, transportation may be necessary if you need to get to school or work. But that doesn't automatically mean the most expensive vehicle you can afford is necessary. Food is necessary. Eating at restaurants several times every week is not. Internet access may be essential for work or education. Paying for multiple entertainment platforms is a different decision. This distinction isn't about judging your lifestyle. It's about clarity. Because when every expense is labeled a necessity, you lose the ability to identify where your financial flexibility actually exists. And once that happens, saving can feel impossible even when your income has increased. Let's imagine someone takes home $4,000 every month. Their housing costs $1,400. Food costs $500. Transportation costs $400. Utilities and basic services cost $300. Insurance and healthcare cost another $300. That gives them $2,900 in essential expenses. Now they know something important. They have approximately $1,100 remaining. That doesn't mean they should save every cent of it. It means they finally know what they're working with. That $1,100 could be divided between emergency savings, debt repayment, investing, and reasonable personal spending. Without those numbers, the person might simply look at their account balance and assume they have plenty of money. Then the month begins. A few purchases happen. The balance falls. And suddenly the person feels poor again. This is why budgeting isn't about restricting yourself. A good budget gives you information. It tells you what your money can safely do. And more importantly, it tells you what your money cannot safely do. That distinction can protect you from one of the most common financial traps: lifestyle inflation. Lifestyle inflation happens when your income increases and your spending rises alongside it. Imagine you receive a significant raise. Instead of using part of that increase to strengthen your finances, you upgrade your apartment. Then you upgrade your phone. Then you start eating out more. Then you buy a better car. Then you add more subscriptions. Nothing feels unreasonable. You earned more money, so you spend more money. But after a few years, something strange happens. You're earning significantly more than before, yet you don't feel significantly richer. Why? Because your lifestyle expanded at the same speed as your income. The extra money never had a chance to become wealth. This is why every paycheck should have a predetermined purpose. When your income increases, your lifestyle doesn't have to increase by the same amount. Imagine receiving an additional $500 every month after a raise. You could spend the entire $500, or you could decide that $200 goes toward investing, $150 goes toward debt, $100 strengthens your emergency fund, and $50 gives you additional spending freedom. Now, the raise improves both your present and your future. That's a completely different relationship with money. And this brings us to the next major principle. Before your money starts working for your future, you need to make sure your present financial obligations aren't working against you. Debt is one of the biggest reasons a paycheck can disappear before you have a chance to build anything. And not all debt behaves the same way. Some forms of borrowing may be connected to assets or long-term goals. Other debt, especially high-interest consumer debt, can become extremely expensive. Credit card balances are a classic example. When you carry a balance at a high interest rate, you're not simply buying something today and paying for it later. You're also paying for the privilege of borrowing that money. And the longer the balance remains, the more expensive the original purchase can become. Think about that the next time you consider putting something on a credit card. The real price isn't always the number on the receipt. The real price can include the interest you pay afterward. That's why your payday routine should include a clear debt strategy. At the very least, make sure required payments are made on time. But if you're carrying expensive debt, don't stop there. You need a plan for getting rid of it. There are two popular approaches. The first is the debt avalanche. You focus additional payments on the debt with the highest interest rate, while maintaining the required payments on your other debts. From a mathematical perspective, this can be highly efficient because you're attacking the debt that is costing you the most. The second is the debt snowball. Instead of starting with the highest interest rate, you begin with the smallest balance. Once that debt disappears, you take the money you were paying toward it and roll that amount into the next debt. Mathematically, it may not always save the most money, but there's something mathematics doesn't fully capture: momentum. When someone eliminates a debt completely, they experience a visible victory. That can make it easier to stay committed. And in personal finance, consistency is incredibly valuable. The perfect strategy doesn't matter if you abandon it after 3 weeks. The strategy you can follow for months and years may ultimately produce better results. But even after you've started controlling your debt, there's another problem that can destroy your progress: unexpected expenses. And this is where most financial plans get tested. Because it's easy to feel financially responsible when nothing goes wrong. The real test comes when something does. Your income gets interrupted. Your car needs a repair. Your computer stops working. A family emergency creates an unexpected expense. Suddenly, the money you thought was available for investing or debt repayment has to be used just to survive, unless you already prepared for that possibility. That's why the next stage of your payday routine is not about getting rich. It's about becoming harder to financially destroy. It's about building a reserve that allows you to face an unexpected problem without immediately reaching for a credit card, taking a high-cost loan, or abandoning your long-term goals. And that brings us to one of the most overlooked foundations of wealth building: your emergency fund. Because before you can confidently build wealth for the future, you need to make sure one bad month doesn't wipe out everything you've built so far. An emergency fund is one of those financial tools that doesn't feel exciting when you're building it. Nobody posts a screenshot of their savings account and says, "Look at this incredible emergency fund." It doesn't have the excitement of buying a stock. It doesn't have the status of owning a luxury car. And it doesn't create the instant satisfaction that comes from spending money. But when something goes wrong, an emergency fund can suddenly become one of the most valuable things you own. Imagine you've spent months carefully paying down debt and finally started investing. Then, without warning, your income is interrupted. If you have no savings, the entire financial plan can go into reverse. You may have to borrow money. You may have to sell investments at an inconvenient time. You may have to delay important payments. Or you may simply find yourself depending on someone else to get through the month. An emergency fund creates another option. You can use cash that was deliberately set aside for exactly that situation. A common long-term target is around 3 to 6 months of essential living expenses. But don't misunderstand that number. It isn't a commandment. Someone with a very stable income and few financial responsibilities may need a different reserve from someone whose income changes frequently or who supports several people. The important thing is to create a meaningful cushion. If your essential monthly expenses are $20,500, 3 months would be $7,500. 6 months would be $15,000. Those numbers might seem overwhelming, so don't stare at the final number and convince yourself that the goal is impossible. Break it down. Maybe your first target is $500, then $1,000, then 1 month of essential expenses, then 2. The point is not to build the perfect emergency fund overnight. The point is to make your financial position stronger every time you get paid. And there's another important detail. Your emergency fund isn't supposed to be your investment portfolio. Its primary job is accessibility. If the money is needed tomorrow, you don't want to discover that its value has dropped because the market is having a bad week. You also don't want your emergency savings locked somewhere that makes accessing it difficult or expensive. This money has a different job from your investments. Investments are designed for long-term growth. Emergency savings are designed for short-term protection. Understanding that difference is incredibly important. Because once you have some financial protection in place, you can begin focusing more aggressively on building wealth. And that's where your paycheck starts becoming something much more powerful. It stops being only a source of money for this month. It becomes a mechanism for funding your future. One of the first places to look is your employer's retirement benefits. Many workplaces offer retirement plans where employers contribute additional money when employees contribute. The exact structure depends on the company and the plan. But if your employer offers a match, you should understand exactly how it works. Think about it this way. Your employer is already offering a benefit connected to your compensation. You may have to contribute some of your own money to qualify for it. But once you understand the rules, you can decide how much to contribute and how that fits into your overall financial plan. The important point is simple. Know what your employer offers. Don't ignore financial benefits simply because they aren't deposited directly into your checking account. Your salary is only one part of the compensation you may receive. Retirement contributions, insurance, bonuses, paid benefits, and other programs can all affect your financial future. And if you're eligible for a retirement match, failing to understand it could mean missing an opportunity to increase your long-term savings. But retirement investing isn't only about employer contributions. It's also about time. This is where compound growth becomes extremely important. Imagine you invest money today. That money earns a return. If you leave the gains invested, they can potentially generate additional returns. Over time, the growth can build on previous growth. That's compounding. And the longer the process continues, the more significant it can become. Let's say 2 people are both capable of investing $300 a month. One begins in their 20s. The other waits until their 30s. They may contribute the same amount every month once they begin. But the first investor has something the second investor can never recover: those additional years. That's why starting early can matter so much. You don't need a huge amount of money to begin. You need time and consistency. Of course, investment returns aren't guaranteed. Markets rise and fall. There can be periods when your investments lose value. That's normal market risk. The purpose of long-term investing isn't to avoid every decline. It's to build a strategy that matches your time horizon and risk tolerance, and then stay committed through the inevitable ups and downs. This is another reason diversified investing can be useful. Instead of depending entirely on the success of one company, a diversified investment can spread exposure across many companies or assets. Again, the right strategy depends on your circumstances. But the broader lesson is powerful. You don't need to predict the future to participate in long-term wealth creation. You need a plan you understand and the discipline to keep following it. And that brings us to one of the biggest mistakes people make when they start investing. They try to make investing exciting. They look for the next huge stock. They search for dramatic opportunities. They watch market predictions every morning. They become obsessed with short-term price movements. And eventually, investing starts to feel like gambling. But building long-term wealth doesn't have to be exciting. In fact, boring can be a good thing. A diversified strategy, regular contributions, reasonable costs, long-term thinking, and patience. Those principles may not generate dramatic headlines, but they can be far more useful than constantly trying to predict which investment will explode next. The same principle applies to retirement accounts. Depending on where you live, different retirement accounts may offer different tax advantages. Some may provide tax benefits when you contribute. Others may offer tax advantages when you eventually withdraw the money. The details matter, so you need to understand the rules that apply to your country and your specific account. But the basic concept is straightforward. You want to use the financial tools available to you in a way that allows more of your money to remain invested and working toward your goals. Because taxes are another cost that can quietly reduce long-term wealth. And successful investors don't ignore costs. They pay attention to them. Investment fees, account fees, taxes, interest. All of these can affect the amount of money you actually keep. You don't have to become obsessed with every tiny expense, but you should understand the major ones. Now let's go back to something much more immediate. Your spending. Because even if you're investing every month, you can still undermine your progress by allowing your lifestyle to expand uncontrollably. This is where something called lifestyle inflation becomes dangerous. Imagine you earn $3,000 a month early in your career. You learn to live on that amount. Then your income rises to $4,000. You think, great, I have another $1,000. But instead of keeping your expenses near $3,000, your lifestyle expands. You move into a more expensive apartment. You upgrade your car. You eat out more. You travel more. You buy more things. Eventually, your expenses rise close to $4,000. Then your income increases again, and the same thing happens. This creates a strange financial situation where your income keeps increasing, but your financial security doesn't. The solution isn't to reject every lifestyle improvement. You should enjoy the benefits of earning more. The key is making sure your lifestyle doesn't consume every increase. If your income rises by $1,000, you don't have to spend all $1,000. Maybe you use part of it to improve your life, but another part can increase your savings rate. Another part can accelerate debt repayment. Another part can increase your investment contributions. Now your higher income is creating both a better present and a stronger future. This is one of the easiest ways to build wealth without feeling like you're sacrificing everything. Instead of trying to dramatically reduce your lifestyle, simply prevent your lifestyle from growing as quickly as your income. And this becomes especially powerful when you automate it. Because automation is what turns good intentions into repeated behavior. Think about how many financial decisions you make during an ordinary month. Should I save this money? Should I transfer money to my investment account? Should I pay extra toward my debt? Can I afford this purchase? Should I move money into my emergency fund? Every one of those decisions requires attention, and attention is limited. Eventually, you're going to get tired. You're going to get distracted. You're going to have a difficult week. That's normal. Your financial system shouldn't depend on you being perfectly disciplined every single day. This is where automation changes the game. Imagine getting paid on Friday. Instead of leaving the entire paycheck sitting in one account and hoping you make good decisions for the next 4 weeks, your predetermined transfers happen automatically. Money moves toward your savings goal. Money goes toward investments. Your required payments are handled. Your spending money remains available. And suddenly, the question isn't whether you're going to save this month. You've already saved. You don't have to fight the temptation because the money designated for your future has already been separated from the money available for today's spending. That's the power of paying yourself first. You're not waiting to see what remains. You're deliberately giving your future a place in your paycheck. But there is one final problem. Automation can become dangerous if you never review it. Your financial life changes. Your income changes. Your expenses change. Your goals change. Maybe you receive a raise. Maybe you pay off a loan. Maybe your rent increases. Maybe you start supporting a family member. Maybe your priorities change completely. Your automated system should evolve with you. A financial plan isn't something you create once and forget. It's something you maintain. And when you combine all of these ideas, your payday routine becomes surprisingly simple. Understand your essential expenses. Cover your required obligations. Build emergency savings. Take advantage of appropriate employer retirement benefits. Reduce expensive debt. Invest consistently for long-term goals. And automate as much of the process as reasonably possible. But there's still one final piece. The piece that determines whether this entire system actually changes your life. Because knowing what to do with your paycheck is one thing. Doing it consistently for years is something completely different. And that is where the real transformation begins.